Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big League Careers. I'm Matt Yaloff, where we dig into possible careers for you in baseball. It's more than just playing. And our guest today, Josh Rawitch, the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Josh, it is a thrill to have you. And your experience is incredible. And there are so many people out there who would love to know how a Southern California guy ended up in upstate New York running the show at the Hall of Fame.
I mean, I ask myself that quite often, to be honest with you, but it's pretty cool. Honestly, like so many others, I've just been fortunate enough to have a career in baseball that started with the Dodgers, got to the Diamondbacks, and you know, where everybody wants to end their baseball career is Cooperstown. That's where you expect to get, I suppose. If you're a player, that's where you hope to get. And just an unbelievable opportunity I've been granted to work here every day.
So I want to know a little bit about what you do as president of the Hall of Fame. Give me a brief description of your job.
Well, so I mean, like any other organization where there's a president or someone who's at the top of the organizational flow chart, I mean, ultimately, so much of my job is empowering the people around me, hiring great people, encouraging them, and being a strong leader. And that's something I learned a lot about throughout my career, but specifically at the Diamondbacks, just how do you lead an organization? So of course, a lot of what I do is people management and people leadership. But ultimately, I guess my job is a few different things when you think of what I'm intended to do. One, it's run the business of the institution. And oversee that whole operation, whether it's events or merchandise or tickets or PR, all the different departments that any other company would have. Obviously, we have a lot of people that are living Hall of Famers that we interface with on a regular basis. So I get that really cool task of having to connect with Hall of Famers almost on a daily basis in some form or fashion. Obviously, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of representing the Hall of Fame, and then frankly, a lot of development, because not a lot of people realize that the Hall of Fame is a nonprofit organization. We're not funded by Major League Baseball. We're not funded by any other source other than ultimately our own fundraising efforts. So a lot of what I'll be focused on as well in this role is bringing in people to be new members of the Hall of Fame, donors to the Hall of Fame, and ultimately allowing us to do our mission, which is preserve history, honor excellence, and connect generations.
What did you do prior that got you ready for this, your day-to-day?
Well, so at the Diamondbacks and Dodgers, originally at the Dodgers, I started in the marketing department and worked my way into PR. And so over time, I learned media relations and communications, things of that nature. And by the time I moved over to the Diamondbacks in more of a senior role, by the end of my time at the Diamondbacks, I was fortunate enough to oversee about 5 or 6 different departments, which was really everything you saw publicly, from social media and graphic design to the in-game operations, big screen board, basically all the things that the public sees. I was very lucky to have great leaders around me who kind of often showed me this is what it takes to run an organization. And so I tell people all the time that quite often, in particular, my old boss at the Diamondbacks, Derek Hall, would bring me into meetings or bring me on road trips or take me places that probably my job really had no business. I didn't necessarily have to be there, but in his mind, I think he was helping me understand, okay, here's what I do when I interact with the president of the Dominican Republic, or here's what I do when I was in the room when we signed Zach Greinke. Those sorts of things that probably aren't necessarily afforded. I learned how to essentially run an organization. And that's really what I feel like prepared me from the time I left the Dodgers to the time that I came to Cooperstown.
So, you know, the learning part, I don't think in the industry of, I'll group it all together for a second. In baseball, you know, there's so many different avenues and different paths and teams and networks. And I think we're always learning. Would you agree that that's a true statement?
Absolutely. I just had lunch with some of our interns, and they were asking about imposter syndrome and how do you came into this organization, you're overseeing a number of things that, I mean, admittedly, I've never run a museum before. I've been working in baseball for 28 years. And so they said, how do you find a way to still stay confident, lead areas that you haven't led before? And the answer is, I keep learning. I came in here, I've been asking endless questions over the last year, just trying to learn as much as I can about the areas that I'm not knowledgeable about. And even frankly, the areas that I maybe came up through, whether it's communications or marketing or social, I obviously don't have all the answers there either. So I really think the key is hiring really good people, asking a lot of good questions, and never feeling like you've learned it all. I will never feel like the smartest person in the room. I never am the smartest person in any room. I just think, work ethic goes a long way when you're working in sports. Curiosity, caring about what you're doing, and just working hard, I think, is one of the best ways to succeed in the sport.
Yeah, and I would say that your point about never thinking you're the smartest in the room, that's a great quality to have for young people who want to make their mark. You don't make your mark by pounding your chest and saying, I know the answer to that. I know the answer to that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know, but I want to learn.
Yeah, that happens all the time, and particularly in a role like this where I couldn't put a number on it, but I don't know, 50, 60, 70% of what I do is in areas that I didn't previously oversee. I had not previously overseen a development operation or understood how collections management works, or a library, or archives, or how to put together an exhibit. But I'm finding myself fascinated by all of it. I'm incredibly curious in general in my life. I'm just a curious person. And so, I have no problem sitting in a meeting where we're talking about our new initiative on Black baseball and just asking a lot of questions and trying to understand how do we get from this idea that we have to an exhibit that's going to open in 2 years with online elements and educational elements. None of it is my background, but that's why you have really good people who do what they do. That's how a good organization runs.
What would you tell a college student about breaking in to sports in general and baseball more specifically?
Well, a couple things. One, I think you have to be resourceful. I think nowadays there are so many places that you can look to find the names of people in the industry to network with, or ways that you can connect with people. If you're just putting a resume into an online application for an internship, you're probably not going to get it. But if you can find a way to be resourceful and just simply find the name of the person that you're applying to and get into their inbox, or pick up the phone old school and actually make a phone call. There are a lot of ways that, in my mind, if you're not resourceful enough to kind of get into my inbox or get onto my radar, you're probably not resourceful enough to work for me. You probably don't have that level of curiosity that I'm hoping that you have. So whatever it is, be the person that is doing what nobody else wants to do.
Give folks at home a basic description of what goes into pulling off an induction ceremony. I guess, are we post-COVID? How do you, what do you term it right now?
Yeah, so we are doing all the things that we did pre-pandemic in terms of all the events that happen, whether it's the parade that goes through town or the various parties and golf tournaments, all these things that used to exist. So a lot of the things are going to look like they did pre-COVID, but we're still being incredibly careful. We're making sure that obviously we're following all the CDC guidelines. And so that does add an extra element of just attention and detail that you have to have when you're doing this. But it's an unbelievable undertaking, and even more so when you think about the fact that this place has one person focused on events as their full-time job. Everybody else is part of the library or collections or sponsorship. That's not what they normally do year-round, but everybody kind of knows when it comes to Hall of Fame weekend that you have a second job, and so it doesn't matter what department you're in, you're helping in some sort of way. And when 50,000 people quite often descend on a little village of 2,000, it's crazy to see it pulled off. But it's been going on here for 80 plus years, and there's a lot of pride that people take into making sure that when everybody leaves Cooperstown, they say they've had the best possible time, and that the inductees too, they've had an experience that they'll remember for the rest of their life. So it's a massive undertaking, and we're proud of the way it always turns out, and I have no doubt this year will be no different.
Final question for you. Paraphrase a sentence to a younger person who is trying to break into baseball in some capacity. Give me the best advice you have.
I would say you've got to, love what you do, because baseball really is a lifestyle. So make sure that when you're getting into baseball that you love the game, you love the sport. It's important, if you're going to put that kind of time and energy, that you love it. Work your butt off, be creative and think outside the box, be resourceful and reach out to people that you don't know and start to build your network. And love what you do. I mean, Tom Illisorda used to say it all the time, that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I believe I've been lucky enough to do that working in baseball. And quite often people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. But I didn't know anybody at the Dodgers, and I somehow landed an internship and have made a 3-decade career out of it. So don't be intimidated and enjoy it. take advantage of the opportunity to work in the game of baseball, because it's a really, really special way to make a living.
I'll finish it off with this. We've met a lot of people, you and I. You probably more than me, because you have been in and out of organizations and locker rooms and airplanes and whatever. And you are truly one of the great guys and great employees in all of baseball. And it's a pleasure. And I thank you for coming on Big League Careers, Josh.
That's very kind of you, and feeling is mutual. Thanks for having me, and hope we can see everybody up here in Cooperstown before too long.
Josh Rawitch, the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown. Thank you for joining us on Big League Careers. I'm Matt Yaloff. Continue to watch and learn. Take care.